Alyssa, great to have you on the podcast here today. What's going on?
So great to be here, Jared. Thanks so much. I'm excited to be here.
I'm in a really good mood today, surprisingly, even though it's been chilly here lately down in Florida. But I'm going to say part of it has to do with this conversation that we're about to have. So let's dig right in. First, tell the audience a little bit about yourself for those that maybe don't know you.
Sure. So I'm an executive coach. I've been a coach for 25 years. I work a lot with startups, in particular AI startups these days, obviously. I also wrote a book. It's called From Startup to Grown Up. And I have my own podcast also called From Startup to Grown Up. Really, I'm very interested in the topics of how do you grow personally? How do you have to grow personally to become the leader of your dreams?
I love it. Yeah, I think something that's not often talked about too is also, like, you know, parts of you are going to change when you're making that leadership shift, but also not losing parts of yourself. Because I'll tell you, like, I feel like a total different person from the day I started my first company to now. I think it does take up, if you let it, it takes a piece of you. We can talk more about that at some point, but really
I'd love
cool.
to know how you grew. What is one example of how you grew from the beginning to like where you are now?
I'll just quickly tell you, like, the shifts that I went through. I was super morning person. That's where I would get most of my work done and everything. I'd wake up 3:30 and I'd focus on it. And it's kind of shifted now over time where I get my best work from like 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. It's super, and I think it's because the no distractions piece. I've realized that I probably got too distracted during the day with emails, calls, and everything coming in. You don't get that at night, right? You can just do your focus time. But I would say that's just one quick thing. We don't have to talk about me here. I want to talk about you. So let's talk a little bit about, there's a lot going on today. We're going to talk about leadership development and your thoughts on it. But specifically, I'd love to kind of focus in on how has leadership development maybe shifted with all things happening with AI?
Yeah, I mean, such an important topic right now. You know, the pace of change is just continuing to grow exponentially. AI is just another marker of that. And I think that maybe two things I would say is that leaders have to adapt to continuous change in their workplace as a result of the continuous change of AI. And that is not easy to do. I think it requires a lot of skill sets and a lot of ability to sort of be agile and to adapt to a situation. And then number two, we just have more tools. Like AI can actually be a great coach for you. You can brainstorm with AI. You can use AI to role play with you in terms of like how your people are going to think about a certain thing. Maybe also how a message you want to try is going to come across. So I think it really has expanded your ability to be a leader in that regard.
Do you think that it's also made parts of being a leader more difficult?
Well, certainly. I think continuous change is a hallmark of what we get with AI and all those kinds of technological advances. And that's very challenging for leaders because they're managing the pace of change in their company. They're managing people's burnout. They're managing their own burnout, their own kind of exhaustion of kind of the new technology. I think that's one element. I also think that, you know, in the age, so AI is coming with a whole bunch of other, let's say, freight, including decentralization, increasing ability to be in a remote workforce. And that brings advantages to companies in general, but it also brings a lot of challenges to leaders.
Yeah, I would say when we kind of went from this whole work from home, that really had to create a new type of leadership, right? That maybe people weren't familiar with. And there's still a lot of people that are struggling with it. I'm not going to comment either on what's best, because I think it really matters on the company and the people, right? I meet a lot of people that you hear they are dead set on they want to work from home or they don't want to work within, an office. And then I've also met a lot of people that are like, I honestly miss that 30 minutes to separate from work on the drive home, or I liked building the relationships with people at the office face to face, maybe grabbing a cup of coffee or something like that, right? So it really depends on the person. How do you spot what someone's, because it differs, right? What someone's ideal leadership style is?
I think that someone's ideal leadership style is ideally what's going to work for their people inside of their organization. So I think a lot of people, a lot of leaders will say, well, I'm not a micromanager, or I don't want to get into the weeds with my people, or something like that. And that's fine and great. But if your people need more direction from them, you can't just stand on your own high horse as like, this is the way I am as a leader. At the same time, if you're a leader who likes to be in the details and you've hired very senior people around you and they are like, please stay out of my way and hold me accountable for my results, you can't just keep deciding that you want to be in the details. So I think it requires you as a leader and your leadership style, you certainly have a natural swing. So in my book, I talk a lot about this, the idea of you need to have self-awareness to understand what your natural swing is. And then you need to have situational awareness to look around you about what works around here, both culturally, with your peers around you, and also with your team. And then you've got to find the ways to constructively adapt your style to your current context. And by the way, it will probably change, and so you need to adjust.
Let's talk about how certain tech cycles impact leadership styles, right? Because back in the day, right, Steve Jobs was a legend, but his leadership style was maybe something that would not have worked today, right, with this generation. But it did work back then. Like people were, it was a different time, right, where if you had a job, you'd stay at that company for a long time. You wouldn't like kind of go to different opportunities. So even and you wanted to work on something that was like really transformative, right? So obviously with what they were doing with the iPhone and the Mac was incredible. So his leadership style could be different. Now, we mentioned this earlier, AI is in full mode right now. Everyone is, if you'd have to go really far to see a pitch deck or hear a marketing message that does not say AI in it. How is that going to impact things? Because now all of a sudden, maybe you're not leading as large a team because there's certain parts that are streamlined. And I almost feel like the speed at which we need to innovate has gone up now because of AI. So like, how does that impact leadership style?
Yeah. So there's two parts to that. Everything you just said is so accurate. Like the pace of innovation, I think, is expected to be more intense. And also, you're leading smaller teams. It's more agile. People are more independent. Again, decentralized leadership. And so you need to, as a leader, I think, recognize that and open the reins a little bit and find ways to figure out what's going on, even if people are not right in front of you. And if people are dashing out and doing a whole bunch of things super fast, faster, you can monitor them. So dashboards, conversations, probably monthly meetings to bring everybody on the same page. Those are the kinds of tools that you need to really get good at. But the second point is that the human touch never goes out of style. So I think that a leader of today needs to be even better at having career conversations, even better at having heart-to-hearts, even better at giving impactful, meaningful performance feedback to people, because that is going to distinguish you as a leader. It's also going to help you build trust with your people so they tell you what's going on, because there's no way you're going to be able to know what's going on inside the organization in kind of today's environment. So you've got to have those trusted relationships that people will come to you. They know they won't be punished. They know they'll be like, that they have a good relationship and a rapport with you.
I love it. I wanted to, just kind of going back to my notes here, this kind of is in line with what one of the things you and I wanted to chat about was just adjusting to a new reality, right? So this puts a lot of strain on people because there's leaders out there that I think they're wrong to do this, but we're not using AI. Like AI, we're not going to do that. I've seen it. I think it's more of a marketing ploy to like get some press, right? Of saying like, oh, look, they're contrarian. They're doing something totally different. But let's talk about how do people adjust to this? Like, this is definitely not a technology that feels like even blockchain was several years ago, where it's like, it's going to come and go and, maybe it gets involved, but not to the full extent that people are thinking. That's not going to be the case with AI. So how should leaders adjust to this new reality of we need to be implementing AI, we need to be figuring out how this is going to impact our workforce, and really every tool, right? Every tool is changing in terms of how you're using it. So how do we adjust to this new reality?
Yeah. So I love the word reality because that's where it starts, right? So the key to success in most things in life is to accept reality. I wish it weren't this way. It shouldn't be this way. It should be better. It should be more ethical, more fair, more accurate, whatever. Doesn't matter. This is what's happening right now. And the quicker you can accept that, the quicker you can then figure out how you need to adjust. There's plenty of leaders that I talk to, and the reasons you gave are accurate. Like sometimes maybe they're just being contrarian. They have some questions about maybe ethical frameworks, which again, fair enough. I think they're things that have to get, worked out, but they would also just honestly, they're not comfortable with that technology and the pace of this change, and they need to get more comfortable. And that might be like having a tutor, through immersing yourself, determining that you will use AI on a regular basis, whatever that means. Find out what people in your organization are doing using AI. If you're not technical, find out what the technical people are doing to use AI. That's one, thing I would suggest. The second thing I would say is that people will say, oh, we're not using AI because AI hallucinates. Listen, AI is as worse as it's ever going to be today, is as bad as it's ever going to be. It's going to get much better from here. So you can't kind of rely on it's not fully accurate, or, it's, all these different reasons. You've got to figure out, how can I make it work for me? And then once you accept reality, I really think that you need to figure out what are the best people doing using AI, because to your point, it's not just ChatGPT and asking questions. It's about, software development being completely different. HR processes are transforming. It's important to experiment with them and also give your people the run room and the air cover to experiment also.
Yeah, it's it's super interesting when you look at kind of, where am I going with it? It's not just the taking certain tasks, and maybe there was something that took 30 minutes, but now you think you can get it down to 10. So, but that's not always just by creating something new. That can be by using an enterprise secure, like either ChatGPT or one of these other services, right? Of how do we also instill in our workforce prompt engineering so that they're asking the right questions. And also, going back to your hallucinations point, I could ask an employee something and they could accidentally give me the wrong answer. And then I would say, are you sure about that? Check again.
Right.
I would still say that to the employee, right? I say that to the AI. I say that to ChatGPT. I think that's wrong. Can you check that? Oh, you're right. It was wrong. So it's still the same thing as what we've experienced in the past. We're just talking to a computer now.
Totally.
Yeah.
That's an important thing, right? People hallucinate all the time, quote unquote hallucinate. The other thing is that the thing about ChatGPT, just to use that as a great use case, is that it knows so much more than any employee. It just does. And so, maybe things are hallucinations and not fully accurate. I myself asked about a bio for Alisa Cohn and it totally hallucinated. Okay, so I wouldn't just cut and print whatever it gives me on that. But thinking about leadership concepts, thinking about even technology concepts, thinking about any kinds of concepts you want to learn, it gives you things that you wouldn't have access very quickly, obviously, that you wouldn't have access to unless you had access to 1,000 experts. It also reminds you of stuff you already knew when you can load it up with just articles with I put my book into Google LLM and asked it questions about my book. And it was just fascinating what it could tell me about my book that I forgot.
Absolutely. Yeah. Google LLM is awesome.
It's awesome.
Great study tool too. Imagine having that in school.
Exactly.
Oh man. Yeah. It's, when I look at what's it called, how we're leveraging these tools today, though, it'll also I think leadership is going to have to be aware. Things are going to change so rapidly that what we're talking about today could be, as you said, hallucinations are just going to continue to go down. That's not going to go up. Hopefully not. It depends what the training data is, right? If people keep giving wrong information, then that'll impact it to a degree. But yeah, I mean, I guess last kind of piece as we wrap up here, just let's talk about leaders implementing an AI plan of action first 90 days. From a leadership standpoint, what's your advice to them?
Well, I mean, you mean in terms of how to use AI, or from an employee coming on board?
Let's say in terms of if a company is deciding to implement AI.
Yeah.
from leadership down, what are some of the first things that they need to do to get their team on board with this new reality, as you mentioned?
Yeah.
Earlier?
Great question. So it does start with the leader. So the leader has to kind of decide we're getting on board. Number two, the leader has to work with the executive team to understand what does that mean that we're getting on board. And then part of what that is psychological safety and the ability to do some risk taking, some experimentation, doing things with no stakes, taking time to learn. You've got to reskill the workforce. So you want to get your HR team involved with what is our existing skills, like do a skill audit and a workforce kind of capacity audit, and then figure out what are the skills that we need inside of the workforce, and then you can train and hire people. But basically, once the leader decides that we're doing this, it's really about risk-taking, experimentation, and then learning for the first 90 days, and then being able to have places where people can share their best practices and share their understandings and their learnings, because that's going to help the entire organization learn together.
And I lied, it wasn't the last question. There's one more. What are you excited about when it comes to the HumanX conference?
Oh, I'm super excited about hearing about all the advances that are going on. I only know my corner of the world, and I'm excited to hear from experts and other folks who have a very different perspective than I do about what they're seeing and doing and learning about AI.
I'm just excited, like that team too. They're always on, because think of how, out of all the conferences, think of how much things are changing. With AI,
totally.
like since when they announced beginning of 2024, right, to the first conference being March 2025, a lot has changed. So really excited for them. It should be a great event, and
Yeah, it'll be a great event.
Look forward to seeing you there.
Me too.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
Great to talk to you.